And today, the Senate rejecting a motion to end U.S. strikes on Iran in a 53-47 vote, allowing President Trump to continue military operations. Joining me now are our panelists and guests, Mike Sarraille, retired Navy SEAL officer and Chief Talent Officer for Overwatch Mission Critical, as well as Brian Taef, founder of GenNow.Network. Great to have you both on the program. So the vote failing means that the president can continue his military operations in Iran. The White House saying regime change in Iran isn't the main objective right now. The focus, they say, is on making sure the operation succeeds quickly and effectively. Here's White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt.
Obviously, as the president has said numerous times, do we want to see Iran being led by a rogue terrorist regime? No, of course not. So any day the United States of America is taking out a terrorist is a good day for our country and a good day for our people.
Mike, if you could talk to us about the scale of this military operation so far and how the military is able to carry out so many strikes, thousands, in a coordinated manner with another nation state, Israel.
Well, this is a combined operation, and we couldn't achieve the objectives we have without our partner and ally, Israel, which is a technologically advanced military in itself. But this comes down to the amount of combat preparation, planning, and constant training we conduct in the United States. Very complex training operations that includes the coordination amongst sea assets, land assets, as well as air dominance assets. And the fact that we've gained control or air dominance over the Iranian airspace, I would explain it like this. One, the second we've degraded both their radar and air defense networks, it allows our aircrafts to fly unopposed and actually come down in elevation. And when it come down in elevation to include ISR assets, our reconnaissance assets, that can fly at a lower altitude, can keep eyes on the mobile sites that or the suspected areas that we believe mobile sites are either underground, they come up, they shoot. We can strike these targets into the future. So that is a huge advantage that we own the airspace. It allows us to conduct what we call full spectrum kill chain operations, and we are at that point. So at this point, we have to give the military time, be it 2 weeks, 4 weeks, or even 2 months, to completely degrade Iranians' ability to fly, to strike, and especially fund chaos throughout the region. And we are on track to achieve that. We've completely destroyed their Navy. We actually had a submarine torpedo attack since World War II. So it just shows the sophistication and the coordination and the professionalism of our armed forces.
It's really significant perspective on what air superiority really means. Brian, if the Iranian regime were to fall, do we have any idea of who might replace them? And do you think there may be a reasonable option the majority of Iranians might be able to get behind?
That's absolutely a great question, because everybody's concern is that Iran turns into another Libya or Afghanistan or Iraq. But Iran is different. Iran has continuity to the crown prince, the son of the former Shah of Iran. Reza Pahlavi is the leading figure that's leading this opposition. And in the diaspora world of the Iranian community, he's a top guy. Inside of Iran, people are risking their lives, raising the old lion and sun flag, chanting his name from their balconies while being shot at in the streets. So Iran has this unifying figure that the Persians, the Kurds, the Baluchis, the Arab population all look at the Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi as this unifying figure that would handle the transitional period between the Islamic Republic to whatever the free will of the Iranian people is at the end of the day. Whatever form of government they choose to have is their choice. But at the moment, the Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi is that guy that's leading the charge.
Now, the U.S. Central Command today confirming first combat use of long-range precision strike missiles. Meanwhile, U.S. forces either hitting or sinking more than 20 ships, as Mike, you pointed out, from the Iranian regime. Here's Secretary of War Pete Hegseth. Seems like we don't have it. Brian, I'll go back to you. What does this ultimately reveal about the scale and scope of Operation Epic Fury?
I believe the administration has the responsibility to say the goal is not regime change. That's not what we want to tell the world. But ultimately, when you start eliminating the supreme leader of the regime, the end result would be the downfall of the regime itself. So they choose another supreme leader, we eliminated him. They choose another one, the son of the late Ali Khamenei, and he's the next target for Israel and U.S. As long as we keep disabling the military of Iran to retaliate in the full force that he possibly can, they're sitting on a lot of missiles, not a lot of launchers. But as far as we keep decapitating the leadership within and inside of Iran, I think the regime has no choice but to surrender or just fall into pieces.
Mike, during the first Trump administration, we saw the targeted strike that took out top general Qasem Soleimani. We've also recently witnessed a series of these precision military operations aimed at the authoritarian regime's top leaders, including the Ayatollah. How has the nature of warfare in the United States, technological advancements improved, and how is it playing out during this operation?
Well, also worth noting that we just took out the prime battleship or warship of the Iranian regime called the Soleimani itself. They had often touted it as one of the most advanced ships on the water, and our Navy and Air Force neutralized it. But warfare has evolved so immensely, and let me explain that. The ability for us to be involved in the Ukraine-Russian conflict and watch the advancement of drone warfare. I mean, the Ukraine has essentially become the Silicon Valley of drone warfare. It is changing the nature of how we fight. I left the military in 2018. At this point, I would consider myself a dinosaur and obsolete to the technologically advanced military that we have today. Complete professionals. But with the targeting systems, the precision targeting systems, you will see a move towards standoff precision weapons, which allows us to put our troops in a safe position and hit targets from far away. Additionally, you're going to see massive advancements in drone warfare, from swarming tactics to take out aircraft. But what is critical as well, and we're seeing Iran, which is an advanced drone country, actually supplying Russia in their fight against the Ukraine. The anti-drone defense sort of mechanism in production has to increase, as well as our technology has to advance. China is making the same leaps with regards to drone warfare as are all our adversaries. And that will become one of the primary ways we fight. Our industrial complex and our partnership with the private sector is stronger than any other country. The military would not be where it's at with our great technology companies within the private sector working side by side with our soldiers to provide the most advanced technological weapons and then train our soldiers how to employ that to such a high degree. And again, advanced technology in untrained hands, you see what we had in Venezuela. We can't say that we defeated China's systems. You have to ask the question, were they in untrained hands, the Venezuelan force? They didn't know how to employ them. So that's critical that we train those people on advanced technology to employ them how they're intended to be employed.
And Secretary of War Pete Hegseth today pointing to what he calls the early successes of the U.S. military 5 days into Operation Epic Fury. Let's bring back our guests, retired Navy SEAL officer Mike Sarraille and Brian Taef, founder of GenNow.Network. Great to have you both back with us. So the Trump administration announcing that the U.S. is close to achieving total control of Iranian airspace, as we just covered, adding 49 senior Iranian leaders and counting have been eliminated. The Pentagon, Pete Hegseth saying earlier that we're still in the very early stages of the operation.
We are only 4 days into this, and the results have been incredible. Historic, really. Only the United States of America could lead this. And we have only just begun to hunt, dismantle, demoralize, destroy, and defeat their capabilities. Just 4 days in.
Mike, what is your assessment of the job that the Secretary and the Chairman and the Joint Chiefs have been doing? And talk to us about the pace of developments, where exactly we are in this conflict right now.
Yes, it's a great question. I think what it also displays is total information dominance and the network of near real-time information pushed to the people up front, from the commanders to the people on the front lines, which is our pilots right now, as well as our sailors aboard our warships. They've done a phenomenal job to decapitate the leaders in the very first strike, and then the irony of hitting the succession meeting to identify the next leader. That we've just never seen that in our history. It shows the dominance and the scope of this operation, and the fact now that within days we've established that air dominance. From this point forward, it requires patience, it requires resilience and resolve to totally degrade, and I said it earlier, Iran's ability to strike, to fly, and ultimately to fund chaos. Now, we've seen proxies enter the war, and we knew that was a likely probability. We've had an eye on the Houthis in Yemen, who've been relatively quiet, but we saw Hezbollah finally get into the mix. And Steve, I'm sure you're tracking, Israel just took out the top Hezbollah leader, which is a very strong and decisive response that Iran is isolated in this fight. And the fact that we now have the Gulf states, and we're hoping that they enter the fray here shortly. They do require some form of planning and preparation to prepare their troops. That is a massive, massive leap for this operation as a whole and for the Middle Eastern stability and a potential Abraham's Accord 2.0. You could not have expected a better outcome. But to Brian's point, I think what the left grabbed onto was this regime change. Now, Trump and his Trump style in that 2 a.m. address pleaded to the people to eventually rise up and take over their country. That is the nice to have, but it was never the limited objective that was set, which was to destroy their military radar air defense systems, cripple their military, strike regime and IRGC leadership. And when you have limited objectives like that, narrow in scope, those are much easier to achieve. I don't think, and even though Trump holds it in his back pocket, he will never put ground troops in. That could potentially be a fatal flaw if that were to happen.
Now, Brian, a lot to unpack what Mike just laid out there for us. Talk to us about what Mike was saying about the Gulf states and the role that they could potentially play and where you see things heading in that direction. And with much of the leadership now gone, what happens next? How powerful or fragile are the remaining elements of the Iranian regime?
Mike hit all the great points. Well, one thing I would caution Americans is the involvement of the Gulf nations. There's a problem between the Arab countries and the Iranian that goes for hundreds of years. So including them in this operation at this point could possibly end up empowering the regime from within. The Iranian people begged the U.S. and Israel to attack their own government for 2 months. During the last 2 months, we saw over 40,000 Iranians come to the street in one voice. They wanted freedom, and they were shot down with heavy machine guns. And they came to the U.S. and Israel for that support, and they're getting that right now. But they asked Israel and the U.S. for that support. And I think today we saw also the Kurdish forces from Iraq going into Iran. So these all could work right now, but down the road, it could fragment Iran possibly. So we got to stay very vigilant on that.
Now, China, I want to get China in the conversation here. China imports roughly 70% of its oil and natural gas from Iran, not from Iran, but from the Middle East. Iran has long been one of the key suppliers. At the same time, the Islamic Republic has been a participant in the CCP's Belt and Road Initiative. Mike, what kind of message does Operation Epic Fury send to the Chinese Communist Party?
They're isolated. And it's not just Epic Fury. It's what happened in Venezuela. With Venezuela and Iran, we've just removed 2 sanctioned countries where China had access to, let's call it, discounted oil. China cannot sustain their expanded economic growth through domestic production. As you just said, they import 70 to 75% of their oil. It's no different than Japan in World War II. Part of Japan's expansion in the early days was due to their limited oil reserves. What Japan ultimately failed was in the transport from Malaysia, where they gained access to oil after they took it, back to Japan. We knew that was a critical or strategic vulnerability. China is no different. The one thing I would caution is that if we further isolate China through their Belt and Road Initiative, we've limited them to the Western Hemisphere. They still have a strong presence in Africa. They possibly could become more aggressive in the Indo-Pacific, as it's just human nature. As you corner an animal to a limited space, they will become more aggressive in the terrain that they still own.
Brian, how might the military campaign we're seeing unfold affect China's leverage and influence in the Middle East, particularly given its ties to Iran? And also, as someone, Brian, who's experienced life under the Islamic regime, what can you tell us based on your own experience about the way Iran persecutes its own people?
One of the benefactors of this evil regime has been the CCP. They use the most vulnerable group of people all around the globe. It's not just Iran, to take advantage of, to buy oil at a discounted price. They have done that with Iran, but they have done that in Venezuela, as Mike mentioned. But cutting that off, force them to go to the open market and buy that at full price. And as far as the Islamic regime and its oppressive system, since their inception back in 79, they had started to murder tens of thousands of Iranian people, and they didn't let up. This is something that we are seeing this past 2 months. Thanks to the internet and social media, the whole world has a front row seat to the atrocities that this regime has been committing for 47 years. This is nothing new. We're talking about women who are being raped in prison in the name of the religion. And this is the system of government that allows their soldiers, that allow their police officers to do this to their own citizens. This is a regime of death and destruction. And every day that this regime still exists on this earth, they're going to keep on doing the same thing they have done for 47 years. Death and destruction. That's all they know.
Mike Sarraille, Brian Taef, unfortunately, we have to leave it there. Greatly appreciate both of you joining.